guys? Meredith with ExtremeTerrain.com, and today we are checking out the Barricade 3.5-inch bull bar with the form skid plate, the LED light bar, and a texture black finish, fitting all 2022 and newer Toyota Tundras, excluding the hybrid model. If you are looking for some affordable protection for the front end of your truck that doesn't require you to completely swap out the front bumper or modify your brand new truck, this bull bar will do it and offer more than the average. This will be great for the lighter off-roader looking to protect the integrity of their factory bumper from any smaller road debris or obstacles on the road or lighter trails, and also wants a creative and easy way to add some additional lighting into the mix for better lighting performance for whatever the case may be. The biggest benefit of this bull bar is the position for good front lower coverage, offering center protection for the grille with a large tuba up top that's going to come out from the grille to contact any potential obstacles before your truck does. The skid plate below will also be great for any lower hazards, creating a great barrier of protection, and will be a solid spot to mount the included 20-inch LED light bar. That dual row light bar will be in a perfect position for optimal lighting performance thanks to the bright and concentrated beam pattern, supplementing your headlights to drastically increase your visibility on road without much light refraction compared to other locations on the truck. And the 6500K bright white color temperature will keep that clean and modern appearance to match with other LEDs on the truck. Another thing to note is that this is going to be much more lightweight compared to a front bumper solution, which is going to save your build some of that added front end weight if gross weight is something that you keep close attention to. This will have a large 3.5-inch steel diameter tubing, being a bit thicker than other choices for a tougher look and larger coverage, and the skid plate will be made of a plated steel material. Now, the entire build is going to be covered in a textured black powder coat finish, and that's there to protect from rust, but also for surface scratching or other surface damage, and it's consequently going to give the bull bar a tough look. The lighting will also be built well, which is important for where it's located on the truck, lower and more subjected to kickup or whatever else. And this is going to have an IP67 water and dust proof rating. It will have an aluminum housing that's going to not only be sturdy, but help dissipate heat for the lights to keep them running very efficiently and have a long lifespan, and a tough impact resistant yet crystal clear polycarbonate lens. It will also come with all of the hardware and the brackets included in the kit that are going to be sturdy, made of steel with a black powder coat to make sure that those hold up just as well as the bull bar, and a full wiring harness for a plug and play install. This will cost about $450, and compared to other solutions for front end protection, that's going to be on the very affordable side of the spectrum. It will be more of a simple choice for front end protection, but compared to other bull bars in the category, this will offer some more with the larger tubing and the underbody protection, in addition to the lighting that's included in the kit. It also takes a more of a heavy duty approach with the texture finish compared to other more classic choices that are polished, making it, in my opinion, a great choice if you prefer that HD feel and want a moderate but solid option for protection for the front end of your truck, while also keeping it affordable when doing so. Install will be a 1 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter, and it should only take you about an hour to get the job done with some basic hand tools. And I do want to call out that models with the parking brake support system must turn off the system, and models with the electric air dam, the air dam must be removed from the electric motor and cannot be reinstalled. So just keep that in mind when you're checking this out if you pop this into your car. However, at this point, we can head over to our shop and check out a detailed breakdown on how you can put this onto your Tundra at home. So that's going to wrap it up for my review. Let's go ahead and get into the install.
The tools you'll need for this project are an impact gun, a 3/8 drive ratchet, a 1/4-inch drive ratchet, a 10, a 12, and a 13 millimeter 1/4-inch drive socket, a 6-inch 3/8 extension, along with a 14 and a 16 millimeter socket, a 13, a 14, a 16, and a 17 millimeter wrench, a pair of side cutters, and you'll need to source some zip ties and some rubbing alcohol. Hi everyone, today we're installing a bull bar on our Tundra, so let's get started. All right, now to get started here, just to let you know, you can definitely do this while it's on the ground. We've just got ours up on a lift to give you a better view of exactly what we're dealing with. So the first thing we're going to do is there's a small bracket right underneath the bumper here that needs to be removed before we can install the new bracket. So we're just going to remove this bracket using a 17mm wrench and a 14mm socket. Because of the clearances, that's why we have to use the wrench. And then once we get this bracket out here, we'll just immediately install the new bracket for our bull bar. So first we'll remove our 14mm bolts that are pointing in the vertical direction. Now we'll use our 17mm wrench to remove the other two bolts. And now you can repeat that step for the other side. Next thing we need to do, if you have a vehicle that has the automatic air dam, that will have to be removed before we can install the bull bar. So to do that, what you're going to need to do is disconnect the electrical connector to the air dam, and then there's 3 bolts that need to be removed so that we can disconnect the air dam from the motor and get it off of the vehicle. First thing we need to do is disconnect the motor for the air dam, and to do that, we're going to reach straight up from the motor here, and there's an electrical connector about 6 inches above that. All you're going to do is press down on the release lever and pull it out. Now it's a little difficult to see right now because it is dark up there, but you'll be able to see it if you're looking at it from underneath. So you disconnect that, and now we can start removing the bolts. Now it is a little dark up here, but you'll see that there are 2 brackets. We're going to be dealing with the bolt on the outside bracket here. So using our 10mm socket, we'll go ahead and remove that bolt. And now you can do the same thing for the other side. Next, we need to remove 2 bolts here in the center of the air dam on the bottom using our 10mm socket. Now before you take out this last one, make sure you support that so it doesn't fall on your head. And now we can go ahead and drop our air dam down and get it out of the way. Now the mounting brackets that we're going to be using are side specific, and they are marked. They either have a P or a D stamped on them. So P is for passenger, D is for driver. So let's go ahead and get our bracket mounted for our passenger side. Now we'll install our 17mm bolts from the front. Now due to the nature and the design of these brackets, it's a little tough to see the bolts going in from the front. But you can see the nuts right there that are welded under the bracket. That's where these bolts are going to go in. Now we can put our 14 bolts in. Now our next step is going to be to install this bolt plate here through the cross member that runs across the front of the truck that was hidden by the air dam. So if you don't have the air dam, you'll see this right away. And that's so that we can install this support brace here between this cross member and the mounting bracket. So what we're going to do is use this fishing line that is supplied with the kit, and what we're going to do is we're just going to thread that on the bolt plate, just like so, and then we're going to bend the other end of the wire so that it can feed through the holes and pull this bolt plate through. So what we're going to do now is feed our fishing line through this center hole here, which is the larger of the three, and feed it back down through this outer hole here. And then we'll have to work our bolt plate through it to get it into place. So there we've got it fed through. Now we'll have to work our bolt plate up inside. And then down through the outer hole. Now, once you've got that done, you can go ahead and unthread your fishing line. Now, it can be a little tricky to do, but if you work it from the end and release some of the tension on the spring itself, you can unscrew this. Or you can just pull the spring down. All right, now we can go ahead and install our support bracket between our mounting bracket here and our cross member where we just installed the stud plate. We'll be using the supplied bolt with a flat washer on the front side and a flat washer, a lock washer, and the nut on the back side. So insert our bolt here, slide our bracket over top, and we'll install our flat washer, our lock washer, and our nut. And now we can install a flat washer, a lock washer, and a nut on the other end on our stud plate. And now you can repeat that whole process for the other side. Now we're ready to assemble our bull bar and get it ready to install on the truck. First thing we're going to do is attach the two brackets on the ends of the bull bar here, and then we can install our light bar and then get this thing mounted on the truck. So using our two M8 bolts, we'll go ahead and get those started. And now we'll do the same thing for the passenger side. Now we're ready to install our light bar in the center of our bull bar here. And we're going to be using the two supplied M8 bolts with flat washers and lock washers, one on each end. And then we'll tighten it down with our 13mm socket. All right, now that we've got our light bar installed, we can go ahead and get this installed on the truck. And at this point, it is highly recommended that you get an extra pair of hands to help you get this installed. All right, now that I've got a buddy to help install this, we'll go ahead and get this installed. And the brackets on the bull bar go on the inside of the brackets on the truck. And then we'll put in our two M10 bolts with flat washers on the outside, and then flat washers, lock washers, and nuts on the inside. Now we'll insert our bolt with our flat washer on it, then install the second flat washer on the other side, then the lock washer, and finally our nut. And we'll do the same thing for the other hole. Now that we've got our bull bar installed, it's time to line everything up and tighten everything down. So the first thing we're going to do is tighten up the two brackets that are attached to the bull bar itself using our 13mm wrench. And now you can do the same thing for the other bracket. Now we can go ahead and tighten up the mounting brackets from the bull bar to the frame brackets. You want to make sure that your bull bar is straight up and down as well as level across. Once you've got that straight, then we go ahead and tighten down our bolts on the brackets with our 16mm wrench and our 16mm socket. And now do the same thing for the other side. Now we're going to tighten up the two nuts on our support bracket, one here and the other one here on the cross member. And we'll be using our 16mm wrench and our 16mm socket to tighten these down. And now you can repeat that process for the other side. Now that we've got our bull bar completely installed, it's time to go ahead and hook up our switch for our light bar. Now, depending on your level of expertise and your desires, you can wire this up however you see fit. We're going to show you one way to do it, but it's entirely up to you as to exactly how you want to get this done. So the first thing we're going to do is feed our power cord from the light itself through our grill, behind it here. That way we can run our wiring harness down from the engine compartment and get this connected up. So we're going to actually insert it into this lower grill portion right here. The best thing to do for that is to just lift that up a little bit on that bar, not too hard or you'll break it, and then just feed this through. So we'll just lift up on that bar, feed our plug through. And now we can run our harness and get it connected. And now we'll run our harness through and get that connected. All right, now our wiring harness contains a plug, of course, to be able to plug into our light. It also contains a power cord and a ground cord, as well as an inline fuse. And it's also got a relay. And the last bit is going to be our switch to control our lights. So this, we're going to run along the top of the firewall here to the other side and run that into the cab. We'll get into more detail in that in a little bit. But for now, we're going to focus on getting this plug down to our light bar so that we can get that connected. All right, so first thing we're going to do is run our plug for our light underneath the inlet tube for our air intake system on the passenger side. And then we're going to run it underneath this core support and then around in front of the core support so that we can plug down into our light bar. So we'll feed this down underneath, pull it in, and then this plastic shield between the core support and the front grille, we're going to run this around it and then plug it into our light. Now we'll run this around our plastic shield here. And now we can go ahead and connect our light. We'll just plug this in, make sure it snaps into place, give it a little tug, make sure it's secure. And now we can go ahead and finish the rest of the wiring. All right, next thing we're gonna do is loosen up this 12mm nut on the negative side, and then we'll completely disconnect the negative cable after that. And then we'll take off the nut for the positive side and get the wires hooked up. All right, now what we're gonna do is go ahead and loosen up this negative 12mm bolt on the battery here, and then we'll go ahead and disconnect the negative cable altogether. And then we'll go ahead and loosen up and remove the 12mm nut for the positive side so that we can hook up our wires. We'll loosen up our negative cable. And then we'll completely disconnect it using our 10 millimeter socket. Now we'll remove the nut on the positive side with our 12 millimeter socket. And then we'll connect the red power cable from our wiring harness to the positive side battery. Replace the nut. Now we'll go ahead and reconnect our negative cable. Tighten that down with our 10 millimeter socket. And then we'll go ahead and remove the negative 12 millimeter nut and attach our black ground from our harness. We'll tighten that back down with our 12 millimeter socket. All right, now we've already run our switch over to the other side of the engine compartment, and we run it behind the battery here and behind this factory harness here. So we're gonna go ahead and zip tie that to it just to make sure it stays in place. And of course, we'll cut off the excess. And now we'll just run this across the top of the firewall here. We'll zip tie it to the other harness over there, and then we'll run it inside the cab. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is get our switch into the cab. Now there's a multitude of ways that you can do this. We're gonna show you one way because we're not keeping this on our truck as a permanent addition. So down here, next to the brake booster on the firewall is a grommet about a 4 to 5 inch in diameter. Now, the factory harness is running through that grommet, but there's also nothing behind it or next to it. So my suggestion is, one thing you could do is just cut a hole, slice it into that grommet, feed your switch through, and then once you've got it all mounted in place, go ahead and put some liquid rubber or some silicone over the slice to cover it up and seal it up. But since we're not doing that on a permanent basis for our truck, all we're gonna do is just pull that grommet away, feed the switch through, and we'll attach this to the dash so that you've got an idea of one way of how you can put it in there. It is very difficult because of the location of this grommet to actually get a good camera shot of it. But when you look down here next to the master cylinder booster, you will be able to see this grommet. So now we'll push the grommet out of the way, feed the switch through, and now we can go inside the truck and finish pulling the switch through and get it mounted. All right, now it's pretty impossible to get our camera in here to give you a clear shot of this. But you can feel where the switch is at underneath the dash. So we're just gonna go ahead and grab a hold of that, finish pulling the excess wire through the grommet. As you can see, we've got our switch pulled through. And now what we're gonna do is run it up alongside the steering column here underneath the dash and mount it right here. All right, so now that we've got our switch pulled through, we're ready to mount it to our dash. But before we do that, one thing I do caution you about, get back underneath the dash, check out the location of your wiring harness for the switch. Make sure that it's not near any kind of moving parts or any excessive heat sources, anything like that that could cause an issue. Once you're sure about all that, you've got it zip tied up out of the way, then we can go ahead and use some rubbing alcohol on the dash here to make sure that it's clean and free of any kind of cleaning solution or preservative, anything like that, so that the switch will actually stick. So we'll go ahead and open up our prep pad here. Now you can use any rubbing alcohol that you may have in the house and a clean cloth to do the same thing. So we'll just make sure the area is clear, give it a minute to dry off, and then we can peel the backing off of our switch and get it applied. Now we peel the backing off of our switch, set it in the position where we want to stick it, apply it with some nice firm pressure, and we're ready to go. And that wraps up our review and install of the Barricade 3.5-inch bull bar with formed skid plate and LED light bar with the textured black finish for your 22 to 24 Tundra excluding hybrid. Thanks for watching, and remember, for all things Tundra, keep it right here at extremeterrain.com.